Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk to you about being an elegant and classy house guest, because we are still in a pandemic, aren't we? And I think some of us are staying within our local stomping grounds, and maybe we are just visiting different parts of the country that we haven't visited previously, and seeing family and friends that are maybe a little bit further afield, but not, across the country. So with that, if you are new here, hello, my name is Nicole. I typically post videos on this channel that is talking about my level up journey. I previously was a beautician and I was living in Canada. Now I live in the UK and have been working as a full-time content creator, and I have a digital marketing agency that keeps me busy. So with that, I have been on a little bit of a journey of refining myself and polishing myself, and I've been sharing that journey with you all on YouTube for the past few months now, and I hope that that is of any interest to you, and I hope that you stick around. So with that, I actually have to tell you, I had the pleasure of having one of my family members here this past weekend, and it was a bank holiday weekend here in England this last weekend, and my cousin is a pilot, and this is the first time that I have had any family come and see me in England. So it was a very unexpected surprise, but it got me thinking after he left, like, what are some of the things that are really classy and elegant and respectful ways of conducting yourself when you are going to stay at somebody's house. So with that, let's get into some of the tips or some of the things that I've thought of when you are going to stay at somebody's home. So one of the first things that I want to speak about is asking your guest if they have a intended time that they are going to get up and start their day, because often I find that when someone is hosting you, they've got some ideas in mind when and what they're going to take you to. Hopefully that makes sense, but usually your host will have some type of game plan about where they will want to take you, what they will want to show you, etc. So unless you know that your host is an early riser and you yourself are an early riser, instead of having your host sitting around and waiting for you to wake up, it might be wise to ask them, do you have any plans for us tomorrow? So you can plan your time accordingly. I think sometimes there are, vacations and holidays that you go on that it is purely for rest, and you adopt a schedule that is going to fit you and you take it as it comes. But I think sometimes when you're going to stay at somebody else's home, it is wise to ask them what the game plan is, so you can ensure that you're not oversleeping on your stay and they're waiting around for you, or so you don't get up before they're even up, because that's a little bit awkward too, isn't it? I've definitely been that person where I get up way before my host and you just kind of are looking around and they feel awkward because they didn't have things ready for you when you got up. And yeah, I think just to avoid that whole situation, ask them what the game plan is for the next day. Now, the next thing that I want to quickly speak to is the part of this meetup when you are in transit. I think it is so important to let your guests know what time should they be expecting you, and give them updates when you're on your journey to get to where they are, because sometimes things don't go according to plan. Sometimes, trains run late, planes run late, etc., or there's highway traffic jams. And I think if you can stay in constant communication with the people who you are staying with, that is going to allow them to plan accordingly. Because when people invite you into their home, they usually are cooking, cleaning, and having their home ready to welcome you. So if you can give them the most amount of time to plan themselves accordingly, I think that is a really respectful thing to do. Now, the next thing that I think you should consider thinking about if you are going to stay at somebody's home is letting them know how long you'll be staying for. I think sometimes these things can kind of be played by ear to a certain extent, but I think the more information that you can give your host, again, will give them the most opportunity to plan themselves accordingly. I think often we feel like we don't want to overstay our welcome somewhere, but sometimes it's not a matter of overstaying our welcome, but it's a matter of communicating these things with our host so they are fully aware of what the situation may or may not be. Now, the next thing that I want to speak about is understanding or being conscious of the activities that your host likes to do or may be outside of their comfort zone. So, for example, I may not go to one of my friends in Canada and say, let's go out on a pub crawl, because I know that they're not massive drinkers and they will feel very outside of their comfort zone in a bar or club environment. Does that make sense? So I think really understanding who you are going to stay with is going to be essential when you are not wanting to push people outside of their comfort zones. I mean, they are already being so courteous of letting you into their home, so you don't want to push those boundaries and make them feel uncomfortable because you are asking them to do something that maybe doesn't sit well with them morally or doesn't sit well with how they carry themselves through life. Or they might just have anxiety about doing something. You know, maybe you want to go rock climbing and this person is afraid of heights. I think that we have to take into consideration the things that our hosts typically like doing, even though we may be the guest and we are the most outdoorsy person. I think it could be a little bit disrespectful if you are expecting your host to take you on things that may be suitable for yourself, but maybe it's outside of their comfort zone. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the next thing that I want to speak to is being mindful of what topics of conversation are you bringing up. I think that depending on the vibe of who you're going to stay with, obviously you won't be going to stay with a flat out stranger, I would assume. But maybe say it was my brother coming to stay with me and his partner had never met me before. I think that his partner would still have to be conscious of the topics of conversation that is brought up with me, because the relationship was with me and my brother. The relationship isn't me with this new person. And I think sometimes we have to be a little bit mindful about the topics of conversation that we bring up, even though it might seem like there's a relaxed atmosphere. I think, what is that saying? Familiarity breeds contempt. I think that it's not about judging, but I think sometimes we can see that the environment is quite relaxed and we bring up topics of conversation that you actually don't know if it is appropriate or not to talk about. Obviously, if it's someone that you have an intimate relationship with, then I think that still I would be mindful about the topics of conversation that you bring up, just because you don't want your host to feel like you've disrespected them in their own home. I know for myself, there are certain friends that there are going to be topics that I would not bring up with them, especially in their home, because I know that they don't agree with me on this topic. So the last thing that I would want to do is put them out when they are opening their doors to me. Now, the next thing that I want to speak to you about should be a no-brainer, but I have seen it so many times in my lifetime, and that is, how much are you drinking? How much are you swearing? I have unfortunately made this mistake in my younger years where I definitely drank way too much for the occasion, and you end up making a fool out of yourself, and furthermore you end up giving people a bad view of you if you can't contain your alcohol and or other substances. So I feel like really being mindful that you aren't partaking too much and conducting yourself in a way that you will come to regret, which I know probably is a no-brainer, but I've made the mistake. I've seen the mistake done very recently, and especially when people are welcoming you into their home, usually there will be family around, usually there may be a partner around, and the last thing that you would want to do is bring any type of disgrace to the people that are welcoming you into your home or that have brought you along with them into somebody's home, if that makes sense. Now, the last thing that I want to speak about is saying thank you. And it probably sounds like a no-brainer, but you wouldn't believe how often that these things that are so small that can end up being overseen are the things that end up getting forgotten about because they're so small that it's easy to forget to do them. Anyways, my friends, that is it from me in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. What are some of the ways that you find aren't the most respectful when people come and stay with you in your home? Or have you made any mistakes? as such in the past. I know I have, but I think that this was a place of learning and a place of coming together and seeing how we can be better and more refined and classy and just more respectful, essentially. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I hope to see you in the next video.